Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, where we take up important articles of the day from the newspaper and discuss them in detail as per the demands of Civil Services exam. Articles covered today are displayed on your screen and their notes in PDF and Word format are provided in the description box down below. Without further ado, let us begin.
Now starting off our today's discussion with the first article of the day, which appeared on page 15 of today's Hindu newspaper. This article reports that the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha, it remained adjourned for most of the day yesterday because the opposition, it wanted a debate on the violence in Manipur. Hence the functioning of the parliament on the first day of monsoon session was affected. Now parliamentary sessions are important from exams point of view, which can be seen from this GS paper 2 syllabus in UPSC mains, which describes parliament and state legislatures and conduct of its business. It is also important from mains point of view, which is apparent from this PYQ of the year 2017 on joint sessions. Also, a question on similar lines appeared in prelims of the year 2020, where a question asked us about the powers of the President of India to summon a session and the minimum number of days that the Parliament is required to function. Hence, let us start off our today's discussion with first describing what is a parliamentary session. Then, we will discuss the factors that had affected the functioning of the Parliament in addition to the consequences that are a result of affected Parliament functioning. Towards the end, we will take a look at the steps that may be undertaken in order to improve the functioning of Indian Parliament. Hence, let us start off our today's discussion with what is a parliamentary session. Now, Parliament, it exhibits four broad functions. Now, Parliament, it has a legislative responsibility. As Parliament, it is central to ensuring that the laws and policies passed by the Parliament, they reflect the will and interest of the people in general. Further, Parliament also has a oversight responsibility, which ensures that the executive, that is the government, it performs its functions and duties satisfactorily. Also, Parliament has a representative responsibility. As Parliament, it represents the views and aspirations of people of their constituency in the Parliament. In the end, Parliament also has a power of purse responsibility, which means that Parliament, it approves and oversees the revenues and expenditures which are proposed by the government of the day. However, the Parliament, it does not function for the entire year. Rather, the legislators, they remain in their constituencies and serve the people. However, legislators from various parts of the country, they congregate at the floor of the house during a specific period in a year. And this is when the parliament is called into session. Now, Constitution of India, it does not specifically say when or for how many days should a parliament meet. Rather, the Article 85 of the Constitution, it says that there should not be a gap of more than 6 months between the two parliamentary sessions. Hence, by convention, the Parliament of India, it meets for 3 sessions in a year. The first session in a year is called budget session, which is usually held towards the beginning of every year. The second is monsoon session, which is of 3 weeks of duration and it takes place in the month of July and August. The third is the winter session, when the parliament meets in the month of November and December respectively. The dates for each of these sessions are announced at least 15 days in advance, which allows the members of the parliament to submit their questions and give notice for parliamentary interventions. Now you may ask, who has the power to summon a parliament? It is the president who has the power to summon the parliament. However, the president summons the parliament on aid and advice of Council of Ministers. Hence, it can be said that the power of summoning the parliament rests with the central government. Now, it may be noted that the parliament sittings in general have reduced from about 120 days a year at the beginning. it has reduced to about 65 to 70 days per year in the last decade. And this has been due to frequent disruptions which leads to adjournments. Now, what are the factors that has led to disruption of the parliament? Let us take a look in the next slide. The first factor that affects the parliament functioning is anti-defection law, which was passed in the year of 1985. However, this law has made it less necessary for an MP to prepare for their work, and this is because the members of the parliament, they need to pay attention to their party whip, or otherwise they risk losing their seat in the parliament. Further, the members of the parliament, they are provided with no research staff on their own, nor does the parliament library provide sufficient research support. Hence, it de-incentivizes the members of the parliament to participate in its day-to-day functioning. Further, there has been rise in coalition politics in last few decades, and this has made managing the inter-party mechanisms more difficult. Thus, a matter affecting a member of a coalition thus leads to disruption of functioning by the parliament by other members of that same coalition group. Further, the parliament has been opened up for live telecast, and this has increased the incentives for the groups of MPs to grandstand on issues because they know it very well that these issues will be widely covered in the media, which will be even beyond the live telecast of the proceedings. Hence, these factors, they have negatively affected the functioning of Indian Parliament. Now, what are the consequences of such affected parliamentary functioning? Let us take a look in the next slide. Now, the reduced functioning of the parliament, first, it compromises the legislative business of the parliament, as a direct consequences of the shorter parliamentary session has been hasty passage of bills and budgets which are done without due diligence and debate. Over the years, the time spent on discussing a budget has reduced from average of 123 hours to about 39 hours in the last decade. Further, it affects the ability of the parliament to hold executive accountable, as in the 16th Lok Sabha, which was the last Lok Sabha, the question hour, it functioned only for the 77% of its scheduled time, whereas in the Rajya Sabha, the question hour functioned for about 47% of its scheduled time. And this indicates a lost opportunity for the parliament to hold the government accountable for its actions. Further, these affected functioning has led to lack of avenues to express dissent, as there is non-availability of adequate time for members of the parliament, which has led to their frustration. And hence, it has been cited as a major reason behind MPs for disrupting the parliament. Also, affected functioning of the parliament undermines the legitimacy of the institution, as the decrease in number of sittings of the parliament adds to its poor image as the highest law-making authority in the country and contributes to undermining the respect of representatives that they have in their eyes of their citizens. Further, affected functioning of the parliament disturbs the mechanism of checks and balances. As disruption, they take about 30% of the time of Lok Sabha and 35% time of Rajya Sabha, and it undermines the delicate system of checks and balances which ensures that the legislature holds the executive accountable. Further, it also undermines the separation of power. As a non-functional legislature, it might pave the way for judiciary to undertake judicial activism. Further, it might also enable the executive to circumvent the legislature by using the route of ordinances. In the end, affected functioning of the parliament also imposes a significant financial cost on the state exchequer, as according to a government estimate, each minute of parliament costs about rupees 2.5 lakhs, and disruption of the parliament has led to loss of crores for the state exchequer. However, there are many steps that have been suggested by various committees in order to improve the parliament's efficiency. What are these steps? Let us take a look in the next slide. The first step in order to improve the functioning of the Parliament pertains with diluting the power of the government as a sole decider of parliamentary session dates. As currently the government's power to convene the Parliament, it is in conflict with the principle of executive being accountable to the legislature, as government might delay the calling of session of a parliament in order to circumvent debates. Further, the parliament should have more sitting and with a clear plan of these sittings. Now the National Commission for Review or Working of Constitution, it has suggested that the number of sittings of parliament should be fixed, with Lok Sabha sitting for about 120 days every year and Raj Sabha sitting for about 100 days every year. Further, the calendar of sittings of the Parliament needs to be announced at the start of the year, and this will help members plan better for the whole year, and it reduces the scope of the government to postpone a session if it wants to defer a parliamentary scrutiny on some emerging issue. Further, there is a need to encourage the e-petition system. Under this system, a fixed number of people, let's say 10,000, they may sign an e-petition on certain issues, and the Prime Minister or the Minister concerned will have to reply on it. And when such petition is signed by more than say 1 lakh people, the issue, it needs to be debated at the floor of the House. And hence, it will improve the ability of Parliament to uphold the government's accountability. Further, the opposition needs to be more responsible. As members of the opposition, they must question, object, and suggest alternative course of action. However, they must do so by being reasoned and using persuasive arguments. Also, there is an immediate need to have electoral reforms, which might introduce public funding of elections or combine with political reform that maintains disclosure of sources of financing for political parties. And this will lead to decriminalization of current politics. Also, there should be a provision of holding a special session, which can be convened to provide an opportunity to fix a broken parliamentary calendar. And it will also enable finishing of unfinished legislative business. And these steps will help Parliament to regain the trust of people. Hence, it is essential to conclude that by diluting the power of the government, having more sitting with a definite calendar, encouraging an e-petition system, responsible opposition, undertaking electoral reforms, and having a provision for special session will enable a better functioning of Indian Parliament. Because parliamentary sessions are important as it provides a platform for democratic discussions. Further, Parliament is also responsible for upholding the executive's accountability. And a functioning Parliament will enable the legislature to uphold the executive's accountability. This was all for today's discussion on parliamentary sessions. Now moving on to the second article of the day, which appeared on page 14 of today's Hindu newspaper. This article reports that the opposition MPs, they walked out of a meeting of the Business Advisory Committee of the Raj Sabha. Now, as we know from the discussion held for the previous article, that Parliament, it does not function throughout the year. However, there are mechanisms such as parliamentary committees which enable the continuity of legislative function of the Parliament. However, recently there have been concern over diminishing importance of parliamentary committees and whether the proper deliberations are taking place before the passage of various bills. And this is what we will discuss in the scope of today's discussion on parliamentary committees. This topic is also important from GS Paper 2 point of view, which mentions Parliament and state legislatures and its functioning further with issues arising out of these functionings. Also, Parliamentary Committee has been asked before in both mains and prelims respectively, which is apparent from this mains PYQ of the year 2018, which asked a question about necessity of parliamentary committees. Further, prelims in the same year, a question appeared on parliamentary committees. Hence, let us start off our today's discussion with first describing the various types of parliamentary committees, following which we will discuss the importance of these committees in ensuring the parliamentary functioning. Further, we will also discuss the issues that functioning of these committees face, followed by a way forward which will suggest measures to improve the functioning of parliamentary committees. Hence, let us start off our today's discussion with types of parliamentary committees. Now, parliamentary committees, they are primarily of four types. The first is a financial committee. As these committees, they are primarily responsible for scrutinizing the expenditure priorities of the government of the day. And these committees, they suggest measures to improve efficiency in spending and performance of public sector undertakings. The Parliamentary Account Committee and the Estimates Committee are examples of such committees. Further, there are standing committees as well, and these standing committees are also known as departmentally related standing committees. They are aligned with specific ministries and examine their performance and budgets. Further, they also examine the bills and subjects which are related to their respective ministries. For example, there is a committee on railways as well as there is a committee on health. Now, the third type of a committee is called an ad hoc or select committee. And these committees, they are formed for analyzing a specific legislation or policy, and these committees are disbanded after they submit their reports. For example, there was a select committee on GST which suggested measures to improve the functioning of GST. The fourth and the last type of a committee are known as administrative committees. As these committees, they are primarily responsible for ensuring the day-to-day activities of legislature that are planned in consultation with members. For example, there is a business advisory committee of both of the houses. There is a rules committee as well as a privileges committee, and these fall under the category of administrative committees. Now, after we have discussed the type of committees, let us discuss what are the importance of having such committees. The first importance is that they are specialized in nature. As these committees, they perform a specialized jobs, whereas ad hoc committees, they are constituted in order to perform a specific task. Further, these committees, they provide an opportunity for detailed scrutiny of legislations, as due to magnitude of work and limited time which are available for functioning of parliament, the MPs, they are unable to comprehensively scrutinize a legislation on the floor of the house. Also, the working of the parliament is affected often. However, these committees, they function throughout the year and they provide the ability to scrutinize a legislation in a detailed manner. Further, these committees, they offer parliamentarians a forum to develop expertise. As anti-defection law, it does not apply to functioning of these committees, and decisions in these committees, they are usually made beyond party lines. Hence, they provide a platform for building consensus on various issues. And detailed discussion in these committees, they help MPs develop expertise on certain subject matters. Further, these committees provide an opportunity for members of the parliament to engage with relevant stakeholders. As parliamentary committees, they regularly seek feedback from citizens and experts on the subjects which it examines. For example, the RBI governor was summoned by the finance committee on subject of demonetization. Also, these committees enable the parliament to uphold the government's accountability in a better manner, as it increases the ability of a parliament to scrutinize government policies. Thereby, the executive is accountable through an informed debate in the legislature. These committees, they examine various budgetary allocation, and the reports of these committees are discussed on the floor of the house. Further, these committees also help in resolving issues which are related to certain bills. For instance, a joint parliamentary committee was formed on a matter of data protection, and this committee it suggested changes to the original draft which has since been incorporated in the new bill. Also, these committees provide knowledge reservoir. As Indian parliamentary committees, they offer a huge reservoir of information which are then made available to the members of the parliament in order to enlighten themselves, and it contributes to idea of strengthening the parliamentary system, thereby improving the governance in India. Now, parliamentary committees, despite its importance, have faced certain issues in its functioning. What are these issues? Let us take a look in the next slide. The first issue that parliamentary committee faces is that fewer bills have been referred to it in the recent times. As in 14th Lok Sabha, there were 60% of the bills that were referred to parliamentary committees, whereas in the 15th Lok Sabha, about 71% of the bills were referred to parliamentary committees. However, this number it dipped sharply to about 27% in 16th Lok Sabha, hence signifying that fewer bills have been referred to these parliamentary committees. Also, these committees see poor attendance of members. The attendance of members in such committee meetings have been a cause of concern, which has reduced to about 50% attendance since the year 2014 and 15. Further, these committees they provide short tenure for their members, as these committees they are constituted for a period of 1 year, and it leaves very little time for members to develop specializations. Further, there has been a lack of discussion on these committee reports, as these reports they are recommendatory in nature, and reports of these committees they are not taken up for discussions in the parliament except for references in debates on certain bills. Further, there has been a lack of required expertise among the members of the committees. As members of the parliament, they are generalist in nature. Hence, they lack technical expertise which may be required to go into intricacies of specialized subjects which come under the consideration of various committees. Further, there has been a trend of politicization of proceedings of parliamentary committees, as with greater public interest in some issues, members of the parliament they have started taking strict party lines even in these committee meetings, and this has negatively affected their functioning. However, despite certain issues, there are many measures that can be undertaken in order to improve the functioning of parliamentary committees. What are these measures? Let us take a look in the next slide. The first measure suggests that there is a need to extend the tenure of committee members in order to fully utilize their developed expertise, which may be on a particular subject of legislative work. Further, there is an immediate need to provide research support to MPs. As institutional research support, it will allow the committees to examine issues that are technical in nature, and these bodies will then serve as expert bodies, and it will enable them to examine complex policy issues. Further, there has been an immediate need to establish committees that have a wider mandate. For example, there is a need to establish a committee on economy which will provide the space for deliberations on economic policies and its implementation separate to that of finance committee. Further, there is a need to avoid overlapping functions, as additional responsibilities of the financial oversight can be given to a committee on economic issues, which will then do away the existing finance committees, and it will help avoid overlapping on work on budgets, etc. Further, there is a need to have a regular monitoring on functioning of these committees, as there is a need to formulate mechanisms for regular assessment of performance of these committees, and these assessment reports need to be made public. Further, it is apparent that India should adopt best practices of other countries. As in several countries, the concerned ministers they also appear before committees to elaborate and defend the policies of government. Whereas in India, ministers they don't appear before these committees. Also, there is a need to refer every bill to these committees, as it will enable deeper scrutiny of issues that may affect the functioning of such policies. Hence, to conclude, it can be said that strengthening of the committee system can go a long way in improving the quality of laws that are drafted by our parliament, and it will also help minimize the potential implementation challenges. Hence, the need of the hour is for greater and effective utilization of parliamentary committees in order to strengthen the parliament's function as a deliberative body, and it will enable effective oversight of executive as well. This was all for today's discussion on parliamentary committees. Now moving on to the third article of the day, which appeared on page 14 of today's Hindu newspaper. This article reports that the Manipur ethnic conflict it began on May the 3rd this year. However, it is after 2.5 months that the National Human Rights Commission issued its first public statement about the human rights violation in the state. And in this regard, National Human Rights Commission is our topic of today's discussion. It is an important topic because UPSC in GS paper 2 highlights constitutional and statutory bodies. And as the National Human Rights Commission was enacted in the year 1993 after the passage of the Protection of Human Rights Act, hence this makes NHRC a statutory body. Further, in the mains of the year 2014, a question appeared on National Human Rights Commission and asked us to make a comment on its role in protecting human rights standards in the country. Further, in the prelims of the year 2023, a question appeared on whether these bodies are constitutional or non-constitutional bodies. Hence, in the scope of today's discussion, we will first take a look at composition of National Human Rights Commission. Further, we will take a look at instances where the Commission has proven to be a success. Further, we will take a look at structures and functions of the Commission which has resulted into it being an effective body to deal with human rights situation in the country. Following which, we will discuss the factors that has led to the Commission being called as a toothless tiger. In the end, we will take a look at way forward which will suggest steps in order to improve the functioning of such commission. Hence, let us start off our today's discussion with composition of National Human Rights Commission. Now, the National Human Rights Commission consists of a chairperson who has been a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court or has been a judge of the Supreme Court of our country. Further, the Protection of Human Rights Act, it provides for appointment of 3 persons who have a knowledge of human rights, and these are appointed as members of the NHRC, and out of these 3 members, 1 member has to be a woman. Further, the Act also provides for inclusion of chairpersons of National Commission for Scheduled Castes, National Commission for Scheduled Tribes, National Commission for Backward Classes, National Commission for Women, National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, and Chief Commissioner of Persons with Physical Disability as ex officio members of the National Human Rights Commission. The term of office of the members is that of 3 years or till the age of 70 years, whichever is earlier. Now, after we have discussed the composition of NHRC, let us take a look at instances where the Commission has proven to be a success. Now, the NHRC, it has opened the state to judicial and moral scrutiny. The Commission, it has kept a watch on incidences of encounter killings and custodial deaths. It has issued guidelines wherein every death in a police station has to be reported to NHRC within a period of 48 hours. Further, the Commission has been vocal in its opinion against strict laws, such as TADA, that is Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Prevention Act, or POTA, which is Prevention of Terrorism Act of 2002, as these acts they had a huge scope of misuse and possible human rights violation. Further, the Commission has led to expanding research in the domain of human rights. As over the years, awareness about NHRC's existence and work has increased, and it has led to increased reach of the Commission among the people of India. Further, the Commission it can take a suo motu cognizance of human rights violation, which can be based on media reports or other sources of information, and hence the Commission can investigate the instances of human rights violation. For example, the NHRC it issued the notice to Ministry of Home Affairs in 1994 as it had taken up the issue of safety of Chakma community in state of Arunachal Pradesh. Also, the commission has proven to be a success because it has enlarged the original ambit or mandate of the commission. The Human Rights Commission it has also gone beyond the fiscal violation of human rights, and it protects economic, social and cultural rights of people. As the commission, it was assigned to look into the cases of extreme poverty and starvation in state of Odisha in districts such as Kalahandi and Koraput regions. Now these successes have been due to several factors. What are these factors? Let us take a look in the next slide. Now the strength of the commission, it emerges from several factors. The first among which is the selection procedure of the members of NHRC. The composition of the select committee is such that it involves the members of ruling as well as the opposition party and of both houses of the parliament. Also, the composition of NHRC is such that it involves legislative, executive, judiciary, academicians and NGOs, and this gives the commission a broad vision to deal with issues of human rights. Further, the commission has a financial autonomy. As the commission, it is free to make its own budget and spend it according to its own planning. Additionally, the Commission has a power to conduct suo motu inquiries into the complaints of human rights violation, and hence it can take up any complaint on its own. Further, the Commission is easily accessible to people, and it has made the Commission as one of the most popular organizations in the country, as anyone can approach NHRC through telephone, letters, application, mobile phone or over the internet. And it is evident from the fact that the registered complaint with the Commission has increased from 496 in the year of 1993 and 94 to over 7.44 lakhs in the year 2004 and 5. Further, the Commission has advised the Government of India on issues of human rights, as the government has taken the suggestions of NHRC on issues such as custodial deaths, suicide of farmers, child marriage, trafficking of women, etc. Further, NHRC, in a true democratic fashion, has worked immensely in creating awareness among the public of human rights issues, and it conducts seminars, workshops, lectures, provides literature, and enables participation of NGOs, etc. The Commission has also expanded its sphere from time to time. Commission has dealt with issues such as right for information, healthcare issues, disability rights, rights for HIV or AIDS patients, etc. And it has worked successfully in NHRC's favor. Now, despite having such a success story and strengths that has led to improvement of human rights situation in the country, the Commission has been called a toothless tiger. Why has it been called so? Let us take a look in the next slide. Now the Commission has been termed as a toothless tiger, and this is because several reasons. The first of which is that the NHRC can only recommend remedial measures or direct the state to pay a compensation. Further, the recommendations of the Commission are not binding on the government. Additionally, the NHRC it does not have any kind of contempt powers. Thus, it cannot penalize authorities who do not implement its recommendation in a time-bound manner. Also, the NHRC at several times has been unable to take a critical stand against the government of the day, and this has led to allegations of NHRC being a toothless tiger. Further, the NHRC suffers from limited jurisdiction. As the Human Rights Act, it does not extend to areas which are under Armed Force Special Provisions Act. Further, the Human Rights Act it does not categorically empower the NHRC to act when the human rights violation takes place through private parties. Further, under the Human Rights Act, the Human Rights Commission cannot investigate an event if the complaint has been made after more than 1 year after the incident has taken place. Therefore, a large number of genuine grievances they go unnoticed. Further, NHRC suffers from many burdens. As NHRC, it is currently deluged with too many complaints. As there has been about 15 times increase in number of complaints. However, the 15 times increase in complaints are dealt with a commission who has 17% of vacancies. Further, this has led to increase in pendency of cases such as in the year 2015 and 16 it saw more than 41,000 pending cases. Further, the Commission has disposed about 50% of the complaints under the procedural grounds, and this has limited the impact of Commission on improving the human rights situation in the country. Further, the Commission faces scarcity of resources, as large chunk of its budget goes into office expenses, which leaves disproportionately small amounts for other crucial areas such as research and rights awareness programs. Further, the Commission also faces certain other issues, as the Commission is viewed as a post-retirement destination for judges, police officers and bureaucrats who have a political clout. Further, the Commission faces bureaucratic functioning, inadequacy of funds, and these hamper the working of NHRC. However, there are certain steps which can be undertaken in order to improve the human rights situation of our country. What are these steps? Let us take a look in the next slide. Now, the effectiveness of the National Human Rights Commission it can be greatly enhanced if the decision of the Commission are implemented by the government almost immediately, and this will save the considerable time and energy of both the Commission and the government. Additionally, the government should seriously consider the recommendations that are made by NHRCs. As NHRC's order, they are passed by persons who have a long training and experience as judges of Supreme Courts. Also, a large number of human rights violations they occur in areas that have insurgency and internal conflicts. Hence, there is a need to extend the jurisdiction of NHRC to include military and security forces, which will allow them to investigate the allegations of human rights violations. Further, as non-judicial member positions are currently filled by ex-bureaucrats, the credibility of the Commission has come down. Hence, there is a need to develop an independent cadre of staff with appropriate training, and this will enable the Commission to be an independent agency with oversight. Further, steps can be taken in order to increase the funding of the Commission, providing it with functional independence and an institutional autonomy, which will then guarantee the independence of Human Rights Commission. Hence, by implementing the decisions almost immediately, seriously considering the NHRC's recommendation, extending its jurisdiction to security forces, having an independent cadre of staff, and improving funding, functions and autonomy of can improve the human rights situation in the country. and this will enable the Human Rights Commission to act as a watchdog of human rights in the country. This was all for today's discussion on National Human Rights Commission.